Hello, and welcome to the Prescribed Word, your spiritual clinic, a place dedicated to your spiritual well being, where restorative word is always prescribed for your mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Traciann Hunter. If you are new to my podcast, please follow, like, and share, and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when a new episode becomes available. In last week's episode, we discussed the topic Persevere in the Valley and Beyond. We shared a testimony of an intimate journey from disobedience and near end struggles to renewed faith and the daily discipline of abiding in God's will. We shared actionable tips to rise above distractions, trust in God's promises, and persevere with steadfast hope through financial hardships, doubts, and adversities. This week, we will look at the valley as a choice for a closer relationship with God. We will also examine my personal testimony on how choosing the valley has benefited me and how it can benefit you as a believer. Stay tuned. Welcome to all my beautiful listeners in the United States, Jamaica, the UK, Canada, the Caribbean, and the rest of the world. I also want to give a special shout out to my new friends and subscribers at the Four Seasons Hotel in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. God bless you all and thank you for listening. Now, this is what I believe. Embracing a period of difficulty, the valley moment, as I like to call it, is not necessarily about selecting hardships. Rather, it can be about releasing elements that are not functioning effectively or have become stagnant to cultivate a deeper connection with God. I want to share with you my own testimony and how I chose the valley to release everything in my life that felt like it was not functioning right and the part of my life that felt very stagnant. Let's go back a little bit in history. When I got saved at 14, the best part of going to church for me was the testimony service. I loved the testimony service. As a young believer, the Bible characters sometimes felt unreal. So for me, it was listening to real people giving real accounts of the goodness and the excellency of God. Most times when I hear testimony or how God saves or delivers or provides, protects, heals, and anoints his people, it's like being spiritually energized. It felt like there was nothing that God couldn't do. Because of this, I believed in all the things that seemed impossible. And everything I set out to do with God as my guide always had a positive outcome. I always have a testimony. Always. And I truly believe that every believer does have their own testimony. So, when talking about God's grace and mercies towards me, and people would look at me and say, I have a strong faith in God, or some describe it as a crazy faith, I would always just brush it off as a weird observation. Because as a young believer, I thought everyone had that kind of faith. Here's a confession. It was only a couple of weeks ago that I realized that faith is actually a gift. Now, I want you to understand that even though I'm doing all of these podcast recording and episodes encouraging you as believers, I am also learning as I go. So faith that people keeps telling me that I have, it's either I knew and was just very naive that faith was a gift, or I didn't know and was just operating under this gift that I didn't even know was a gift. Honestly, I'm really too old right now to tell which is which. But having the gift of faith does not exempt me from the same trials and tribulations that everyone else faces. When we oftentimes so easily give up on each other, God sees the heart and knows our minds and intentions. So He doesn't easily give up on us. As a matter of fact, He never gives up on us. So, not realizing that faith is an actual gift from God, I decided to choose the valley because I had reached a stage in my life when I felt like I wasn't growing spiritually. I wanted to know more about who God is, and I wanted a closer relationship with Him. I wanted more of my own testimony. The last time in the valley, God had told me that He desires well rounded, holistic believers. I was not balanced. I didn't feel balanced. And I felt like God wasn't being honored through how I was living. So, to honor God and to get to the next level, I felt the valley was my only option. The valley is horrible, of course. The last time I was there, to be honest, I wished I was never born. The thought of going back to that place terrified me. But getting to the next side, it is so rewarding. Here is a story of how I stepped into the valley. The first thing I did was I resigned from my job because having a new degree in a new career path, I was trusting God to open up some doors for me. After all, there were loads of jobs being advertised for a course developer. So I started sending out applications. At this time, I was home and all of my bills were paid up to an extra month from the last paycheck. So I wasn't worried about the bills one bit. While I continued to send out applications, I was praying and praising God every day. I was practicing my conversational Spanish lessons. I was resting and relaxing. I was cruising through the valley. To be honest, I was okay for a while in the valley of death until the rejection emails after emails flooded my inbox. And I was in the middle of that extra month that I had paid up all the bills for. I started thinking about the bills for the next month. Discouragement swooped in fast, and my joblessness stared me dead in my eyes. Groceries were running out, and I had my daughter at home with me doing virtual school because the plan was for her to do virtual school while I would be working from home. Easy and simple, right? I thought about the number of applications I sent out and all the rejections after rejections, and my mind just started drifting, and I felt like I was sinking like Peter, who started great walking on water towards Jesus, but then looked around and lost focus and began to sink. I thought to myself, I must be the stupidest person to walk off a job that was paying my bills and now into an endless river of uncertainty. I cried in anguish and I didn't utter one word, but I knew God heard me and understood every tear I cried. You want to know what happened? He still didn't deliver me. Later, I was able to muster up the strength to beg him for his strength to go on because mine had just simply run dry. I started crying again, but this time I had a lot to say. I was telling God about my motherhood concerns, my romantic life, which I didn't have, my child, my home, my bills, my career, my business. I told him all that day. After telling it all to Jesus, I somewhat felt refreshed and relieved. I was able to go on again. Then Ephesians chapter 6, verse 13 to 18 ministered to me through Danny McClurkin's song titled Stand. I sang that song loud, perhaps 10 times on repeat. Then I read the verses in the Bible. It spoke about putting on the whole armor and having done all you can, praying and fasting, sending out all the applications like I was doing. Having done all of that, I needed to stand and allow God to work. It was from this moment in the valley that I was able to write the strategies for episode 6 titled Let Patience Guide You Through the Valley. I was comforted. That day, my neighbor helped me with my sprinkler system, which I was having some issues with. I honestly believe God has an interesting sense of humor or an interesting way of doing his thing because of all the problems that I had. Solving the issue with the irrigation system in my yard was probably the last on my list that I would have rectified. But I came to realize that God has his reasons for withholding certain things from us, and it is the small gestures and kindness from others that he reveals himself to let us know that he's still with us in the darkest moments of our lives. The other problems were still there, like a giant before me, but I wasn't sure how much more to fight them, and also I wasn't sure when they would be gone. I sincerely believe that no believer should settle for anything less than God's best for their lives. I'm happy for the believers who are content with their little jobs that they complain about every day. But I would rather be content in situations that I know are unchangeable, like the fact that I'm born a woman. I'm content being from African descendant. I'm black, and there's nothing I can do about that. I'm content with the child that I have. What I'm not content with is living the life of an heir whose father owns the entire world. A father who is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the God who created me and took my place on the cross because his love for me runs deeper than the ocean. I can just never get comfortable in mediocrity, knowing who I am and to whom I belong. Some believers would say they have no choice but to stay in the job that is paying their bills or to stay with a man or a woman who is treating them less than they deserve to be treated. But there's always a choice to be made. I chose to challenge God's promises for my life, and I knew from where I was in the valley that He was going to honor my choice. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6 told me that without faith, it is impossible to please God. So, stepping out by faith, I believe, was the best choice for me. Trusting and believing in a God who promised to never leave me or forsake me. Trusting in the God who brought Israel out of years of bondage. So, while some may have had their opinions on my choice, the God of heaven has blessed me tremendously in the valley. Finally, please, my believers, go back and listen to episode 5 titled Faith Will Guide You Through the Valley. All the tips and strategies that I used to overcome my recent valley are explained there. As a matter of fact, the episodes that are so important for you to hear might be the ones that you have not yet listened to. Because I can tell you this, none of these encouragements is coming from me. They are from your Father who loves you so much that he was willing to use a broken, available vessel like me to deliver this message to you. A lot of times we as believers say we're not hearing from God, but God speaks to us in various ways. We just need patience and humility to listen. Next week, I will be sharing the awesomeness of God and how it all worked out for me stepping into the valley. You do not want to miss hearing how God has and still is providing for me without having a 9 to 5 job. How he opened my eyes to money that I have that I didn't even know I had. How he trained me in financial matters. How he opened my eyes to my calling through dreams and visions, and the many things he promised and has fulfilled. Once again, it's been a pleasure. I pray you receive the word your Father prescribed for you today, and that it works like a potent medicine for your mind, body, and soul. See you next week on the prescribed word, where there is always a healing word just for you.